So here we are on Christmas morning, opening up the box that I could not wait to get. Not really Christmas morning, I'm just kidding about that, but that's the way it felt for me. I really was excited about getting a beta version of this extension kit and couldn't wait to get it put together. Right about here is where I realized, nothing's coated. Maybe I should get it coated before I put it together. I am fortunate, I do have friends in the powder coating business, so I figured that was a no-brainer. I'll just take it to them and have them put some powder on this before I assemble it. Okay, well, I got the mill back on the new tabletop, and I will tell you, this is quite a bit larger. We're 64 inches out to out on this table. That gives me a couple of inches roughly to play with once I've got this thing expanded. I'm gonna set the mill up first and go through that whole process, and then I could have that running while I'm playing with this table. Well, you know what time it is. It's time to thank our sponsor, Sienci Labs, the makers of the Longmill benchtop CNC, just like the one we use here in our shop. Go to their website, cnc.com, and check out this awesome machine. You'll be so happy you did. And while you're there, check out all the accessories this machine has to offer, like this 48-inch X-axis extension. You can go there now and pre-order it. So go to their website and check it out. Now let's get back to our video. I'm not sure if you're gonna bring your mill over the way I did. I had it on a sheet of MDF, so, which I had cut out for my wasteboard inside. So I had this elevated a bit, and what I would like to do now is I think I'm going to take it off of this board, put it right directly on the plywood, and then put my wasteboard above it, because I was getting into issues with reaching my extents for my Z, and I want to eliminate that. So I'm going to lower this down. I'm going to sacrifice the 3/4 of an inch, and because I never really do any really tall stuff. If I do, you know, I'll figure out a different way. But first thing you want to do is unhook all your wires. Now, if you're like me, you had that box here. I took that box off and extended my table 10 inches in order to get this. So this is actually going to move over here. This whole rail will move over to here. And then you'll have to figure out a different place for your box. So in this case, what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you. I've got this side right here, which I'm going to mount a piece of plywood on. And I'm going to mount my longboard on that. And all my wires, my outlets, I'm going to put a power strip down there so that everything is accessible. And then I think I'm going to continue to use my holy shit button right here. I think I'm going to continue to use that up here if I can. I really like it in this location. It gives me good access to it really quick. And then, of course, you know, I've lost my drawer, but I planned on doing something down the road for that. Starting this project was kind of simple for me. I realized that the object is to make this mill wider with the kit that I've been given. And how to approach this and what best way to do it is something that I really put quite a bit of thought into. And I did it this way because this is what I felt was the best way. You may find a better way, but I actually started with the simple premises. I've got to get this X-axis rail and gantries off here so that I can begin to do what I need to do. And as you can see, that's what I did. I took the Z-axis gantry off without removing any of the wires or any of that. I just took it right off. So this seemed to work best for me, and it was easier because once the X was out of the way, then it just made it simpler to remove the wires, the drag chain, and all that, and you'll see that coming up. But like I say, you might have a better way of doing it, but this is really what worked for me. And I'll tell you what, it went a lot quicker coming apart than it did going together. But I guess that's true in every case. So removing all the wheels was the last thing, and here you see me pulling this X-axis off and setting it aside. Now here I unscrewed the Y-axis rails from the MDF, and it allowed me to remove that big old piece of MDF and spread this mill out so that I can begin the process of disassembling the wires and the drag chain and all the other parts in order to assemble the extension piece. This did not take very long. It took a little bit longer than probably most because I use zip ties and all that to hold everything in there nice and tight, and I'm not sure not everybody probably did that, so it took me a little bit longer to get it apart than normal, I would suppose, but we've all done this one way or another, so it went pretty easy. So I take a quick look at the plans I was sent and got everything pretty much familiar in my head. I didn't think this was going to be an issue, and it definitely wasn't. We've already, all of us, have put one of these together, and you just watch me take it apart, which really is not hard to do at all. We're very familiar with everything now, so even a newbie can do this, and you'll see just how easy and how quickly this thing goes together. Overall time was probably about 2 hours. Now, as you can see, I have the X-axis gantries all powder coated black, and right now I'm assembling the wheels, the V wheels, and I put the bearing in. Of course, I had to clean some of the holes out because the powder got in some of the holes, but other than that, the thing went together pretty good. Now, just a note here, I did not get new wheels with the kit. I had ordered these totally separate and had them as spares. The directions told me to use the wheels off of the old X-axis gantries and put them on the new gantries, because these new gantries are obviously different to accept the new extruded X-axis. So the other thing that I found out while I was assembling this, it is a bunch easier to properly adjust your gantries to your Y-axis. Get all the play out, adjust those wheels perfectly before you get all the weight on them. I just found that to be much easier than the first time I assembled this Longmill with all the weight, and it just went a lot quicker. I also found it easier to not connect the screw drives on the Y-axis to the X gantries until I had everything together it was just much easier to move around and push back and forth, that kind of thing. So there it is, that pretty red color. I just love the red and the black together with those white Longmill logos. Kind of stands out. This thing really came out pretty cool. Very happy with this. Now you'll notice I'm using the T-wrench there to drive them screws in. That got old pretty fast, and I'll tell you what, back in the day when I was a lot younger, I worked for a window company, and I used to build the framing for storm windows, and we used screw guns and in aluminum extrusions. So there you go, that's what I did. I would say don't be afraid to use a screw gun. Just be sure that you've got it on check so that you don't strip out the screws. Now what I'm doing here is I'm putting the new anti-backlash in. I'm putting the wheels in. Of course, we've got a bigger screw drive, so the anti-backlash nut has to be bigger, and I'm doing all that right here. So made a lot of sense to put it all in before I put this thing together. Once I got it together, then I ran the screw in, but made sure that I took the router out to remove the weight, and I made sure that I took all the play out of the wheels. Now if you have fat fingers like me, this is a little tedious, so having a pair of needle nose pliers does help. Okay, now we're adding the lead screw through the Z gantry, and you know, both of the bearings would have been tough to try to run that through. So as you see me here, I'm kind of pounding that bearing on in the end. Much easier to do without the bearings in there. Just get it to where it's got to go and pound it a little bit on the end like that. Make sure that you put that nut on there good and tight, and always remember that you need to really tighten this lead screw, otherwise it's going to slap up and down and make all kinds of noise and put some play in your X travel. So you don't want that to happen. Now I used a pair of pliers here to hold the screw so that I could run that nut on as tight as I could. But you know, it's okay to use a pair of vice grips. Just put a rag over it or something to keep from marring it up. But honestly, if you do it so close to the end, it's not going to affect anything if you mess up the thread a little bit. But you do want to make sure that gets good and tight. So once that lead screw is in, I now have to attach the anti-backlash nuts on the Y axes, both sides, and I have to attach them to the X gantries. So right now it's just on the lead screw, but not attached to the gantry. So what I did was, you see a little blue tape there. I used the blue tape to hold in the nut, and I ran the screw through. It was a little difficult. Don't really know an easier way of doing this, but I got her done. Well, at this point, I think the hardest part is done. We've got all the wheels on, we've got the lead screws in, everything's tightened down, everything's adjusted. I'm putting the finishing touches on some adjustments there with the Z gantry, but for the most part, everything is done, and we are ready to get started with putting the motor on, the drive motor for the X-axis, and we're going to start doing the drag chain and hooking up all the wires. And that's all pretty basic. You know, you've done it before. It's all the same. It's just the fact that the wires are longer, and you know, should be pretty quick now that you've already done it. So I will say, having threaded holes instead of nuts and bolts all the time for this build was a big help. I know when I built the MK2, it was so much quicker because of that. There's just a lot less fasteners to worry about. You know what I'm going to be doing here now is attaching the holy crap button to the X gantry, and unfortunately it doesn't fit. So I was going to use the tab that they provided, but I decided not to, and I modified it so that it will work. It's not the best, but it will work. If you like your button where my button is, you'll have to modify that mount. And what this is right here that I'm showing you is the attachment for the drag chain to the gantry. You'll see me putting it in with those nuts right there. Those are slide nuts. And I'll tell you what, the fact that they have this kind of stuff with this new style of MK2 is just a time saver, big time saver. And the sturdiness of that axis is crazy. I mean, I thought the double angle iron Z-axis was, or the X-axis was strong, but this one is pretty nice, and it's lighter. So just a lot of nice, neat features. Looks cleaner, and I like the red. I don't know about you, but I kind of like the red. Okay, the drag chain's in. Here come the wires. And trust me, it is a good feeling to start putting these wires in here. I was very excited when I got to this point because it wasn't much longer before I had this thing running. And I'll tell you, you will too. This goes together really easy, and I'll tell you, if you're buying an MK2 with a 48-inch extension, you're gonna love it. You're absolutely gonna love it. It goes together so easy. I didn't do an assembly video on the MK2. Chris just did a 5-parter on that, and trust me, it does not take long to put that together. So that's about it with this. We got her put together, and we're going to be trying to get this thing going and see where we're at with that. Now you notice I got the power supply on the upper side. This is just a temporary thing until I get the lower drawer done. Yeah, so getting gSender all fired up and starting to work with the firmware on this so that it knows it's a 48-inch wide X-axis. You will need to make changes in your firmware. And that's basically up to you. You can go for the max, or you can be a little conservative with whatever size you're looking at. The depth obviously is going to be the same. Your Z-axis is going to be the same. Your X-axis will get larger by a lot. And you know, I had a few difficulties here, but not anything that I couldn't handle. Right now you can see me squaring the machine up, and that was really easy to do. I mean, first time I did this took me a little while, but you know, now that I know what I'm doing, I guess, with it, it went pretty quick. So it worked really well. I had a few issues with my limit switches. I found I had a bad wire, so I had to replace that, and my kit did not come with extension wires and long enough wires, so I had to piece some wires together. And that, once I got all that done, it was good to go. I mean, this thing ran like a top. I couldn't be happier with it. Now, like I said, I had to make some changes to my firmware because for the list of mills, a 48-inch extension on an MK1 wasn't listed, and so we had to go into the firmware and adjust the x-axis length, but that was pretty easy. You can refer to Sienci Labs website and their resources section in order to get all this information, but I'm sure they'll add a 48-inch to the list.
It's alive! It's alive!
Yeah, I was a little tired that day, but even I get a little goofy once in a while. But anyway, we're cutting the wasteboard. I reused my MDF so that I didn't waste all that, and it worked out really well. I used some T-track this time, and I made the wasteboard smaller so that I could cut it totally. And I really don't think I need a bigger wasteboard. At least I found out that I didn't. I kind of based it, as you can see, on the lower left. I made sure I was at as far as that machine would go to the lower left, giving me an inch. So I went to the extents and brought it in an inch, and that's how I set my MDF up. So it's 1 inch. Now, you can do it however you want to do it. If you need to be symmetrical, you can be symmetrical. I didn't really care at this point. I wanted my bottom left to be as far as I could go. That way, if I needed to make something bigger, I could always just shut off my limit switches and go that extra inch or two on the right. But right about now, I've got about 46 inches that I can carve, which is kind of cool. Now, attaching the MDF is pretty straightforward. As long as you pre-drill the holes, you shouldn't have any issues. Just make sure that your base that you're screwing the MDF in is flat and you're good to go. Now, I'll leave a link in the upper corner here so that you can go watch this table build video that I did. Hopefully you find that interesting, and if you do, go ahead and give it a like. I'd appreciate that. And now we're going to surface the wasteboard. That's what I'm doing right here. It doesn't take very long. I sat down on my little stool there and watched the whole thing take place. Came out pretty good, and that was it. We hooked the laser up here shortly and did a little carve. Now, obviously I did this before I put the wasteboard in, but as you can see, I was up and running pretty quickly after I got started. I really appreciate you watching this, and I appreciate all your support. Thank you so much. If you haven't already, please subscribe to my channel and click that notification bell so that you can get notified when I post again. I really appreciate it, everyone. Thank you everyone for watching, and be safe out there.